So of those 5 items, we have three problems that technology is solving today. First of all, we're going to look at 24/7 customer service. We're going to look at some mundane tasks, food safety and sustainability. Let's try to say that fast 3 times. We're going to look at, hey, what's going on with the long lines at the elevators? Can we do something about that? And then a little business to business thing. So let's just get started with the very first item on the list. So Scott, Becky, here's what's going on. Growers and farmers, it's a way of life for them. They work all the time. They work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And when they pick up a phone and want to call their grain elevator or their grain processor and want to know, what they have at the elevator for what the grain prices are and what they have in the elevator for contracts. They want that answer right away. The problem is, how do you staff for that, right? They're open, you put someone on 24 hours a day, how do you provide that customer service? And the answer to that is today, we really have mobile applications that some of our partners have developed. Bushel is an example where the grower can just go to their mobile app and they can look up and see their contracts. They can look and see their tickets. They can see the general balances and summaries and even what's going on in the market. Now, one of the things that, and Becky, maybe you can help me out here. One of the things that Levridge does a great job is to serve that data to those applications.
Yeah, we've been working on integrations to push scale tickets, contracts, your settlement information. On the ag input side, if you have a prepayment sitting with that retailer, all of that gets surfaced in that mobile app so that your growers can see essentially the business that they have outstanding with you and what level of volume is it and all kinds of good stuff there.
That's what we're doing today. Scott's got a little artificial intelligence and Copilot to show us. Scott, what do you got up your sleeve over there?
Right. So, yeah, I'm excited to be able to show because, when you think about customer service, like you can focus obviously on the grower, but also internally. Remember, customer service is an experience that goes beyond just your grower or your external party member. It could even be something internally as well, right? So, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and just take control just really quickly here to share my screen. So, one sec as I click on my share here and we get this kind of set up. And what I want to do is I want to go through an example where basically what we can tackle is show how dynamics can really then assist with some of those types of actions inside of an environment. So I'm going to go ahead and flip over to my presentation here. There we go. You should probably see my screen at this point. So right now we're in basically Dynamics 365 in a product that we call Finance and Operations. And what we're going to do here is we're actually going to go through and use Copilot to really assist with that customer experience. As an example, if I go into my customers inside of here, so I click on my all customers in my sales order and processing area, and I go into, for example, my actual Anderson Farms inside of here. Well, what I can see is that there's some base summarization information that's occurring, but on the far right here, as you see when I click my Copilot enablement, I actually have my sidecar pop out where I can ask questions about data now inside of here to really understand more about this grower. So I could say, like, show me grower details as an example. And what we're going to see here is it says, well, do you want me to grab the details for this given customer? And what's going to happen is it's actually going to go out to the actual grower. And what you can do is you can actually configure this in terms of like using Power Automate to use multiple data sources. And what it will do is it will actually go ahead and basically summarize that by using Power Automate to be able to drive that process. So you can see here who it is, the various details, the credit limit. They're not a one-time customer, as you can tell as well. That's inside of here. I didn't do any configuration really here, Keith, in terms of saying what fields should be promoted in the summary description, but you can use just plain English with a large language model or with AI to basically drive that. Now, one final thing I want to show is that this isn't just something that you get from a receiving perspective. It's also something that you can automate actions inside of your system around. So as an example around that, let's create an alert. a very common scenario is that you may want to be alerted when a specific grower drops off a product, and typically that happens through a scale ticket, right? Whether it's inbound or outbound, it's basically a scale ticket. As an example here, maybe I want to create an alert for this grower when a scale ticket is received, as an example. And what we're going to see here is it says, yeah, do you want me to create it for this particular record? And like, yeah, absolutely. Do I have a specific customer? Yes, use Anderson Farms as an example inside of here. And we're going to see here then that it actually goes through and says that an alert has been created basically for this customer account. And when it's assigned to Anderson Farms, that's when that alert will occur. Now, if I can validate that, what I'll do is I actually have this scale tickets open in my other screen here, just in the interest of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop it open, and you can see I've got some scale tickets that are inside of here. I'm going to click on my manage alerts here, and what we should see now is that we have this set up so that basically an alert will be sent whenever our customer, Anderson Farms, is actually assigned a scale ticket inside of our system. So this is just a really simple example to start going through some of these new concepts where you can actually interact, for example, with Copilot to create data, to surface data, to create summarization of information. And Keith, kind of to your point, in terms of then delivering that customer experience, that customer service experience, we're doing this internally, right? But this could also be notifications of the scale ticket when it comes through, and you can add specific details that you want. So it's a really cool capability that just allows for you to really use the system even better as you go through that. Keith, I'll turn it back to you because I know you got a couple more you got to go through right here.
I love that, Scott. Before you go on, like I can imagine if I had a contract coming from my biggest customer, and I'm sitting at home eating dinner, I would know right away because I got it on my phone. And I could give them a call to, maybe they're interested in doing more business. If I just got a contract from them.
Right?
That is
It just
very nice.
exposes a whole bunch of new
Mm-hmm.
possibilities for you, right? That you could tackle, which is really fun.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Hey, let's go on to the next problem. So mundane and repetitive tasks is the next thing. So sometimes accounting can be very mundane, very repetitive. You do the same thing over and over and over again, and it's just kind of a waste of time and resources. So perhaps that, maybe, well, and we've been working in this in Levridge for quite some time, and it's kind of coming to fruition now, is to be able to automate some of those repetitive and time-consuming tasks. So one of them I want to show you right now is the one where we bring in a scale ticket, and without basically clickless, we create a settlement or money right out of the bat. So let me take and show you how we do that today inside the Levridge product. And let's first of all, I'm going to show you a little file folder here. So the scenario is truck drives up and gets weighed, and the scale ticket gets generated. Now those scale systems, the scale operators do that as part of their everyday function, right? And they hit the print on the scale ticket when the truck has been weighed for the second time. So the truck came in full, they unloaded it, they emptied it, and then a scale ticket is generated with the weights and such. So what I'm going to show you here is this is what the scale software does, and all I'm going to do is I just I have a file that system generates. That is a XML electronic version of the file. Now this happens, you don't have to do anything. The scale software just automatically does that. And you noticed it appeared and now it just disappeared, right? So again, part of that automation is hey, Levridge is picking up that scale ticket information, and now it's busy churning through and processing that scale ticket. So I've got this set up now where what I've drug over here is Levridge, finance and operations running Levridge. And what the system is doing automatically, I'm not clicking, I'm not doing anything. The system is bringing that scale ticket in, making sure that we have a valid customer, that the commodity is correct, the grades, the test weight, the foreign material, all that information comes in if it's required with it, if it's within the parameters, those types of things. It's also checking, the next step then it checks and sees, hey, what contracts, this ticket was for me, Bangasser Farms. So what contracts does he have available and which ones should we apply it to? And there's a set of rules that we've developed inside the system that says, hey, I'm going to take and I'm going to apply that scale ticket to the contract. Again, you can do that manually, but we're on auto mode, right? So it's going to do that automatically based on our rules. And then it's going to sweep through and look at, okay, let's go ahead and create a settlement sheet for this guy. And so it's going and doing that now in the background. And it takes about, I've got it on a 2-minute timer. And so if I've talked for 2 minutes, we should be able to navigate through the leverage commodity accounting and look at the settlement payments. And I have been talking for 2 minutes because you see here, there's a settlement that was created today, just a few moments ago, for that scale ticket that I dropped in. And I can take a look at that settlement and I can see it was this ticket number for these bushels. It applied it to the contract properly. It figured out all the fees and discounts. I've got a check off that's deducting. I've got moisture charges and weigh fee going here. And so this thing, it's all set to go. All I have to do is print the settlement sheet. And if I wanted to confirm and pay, I just click the confirm and pay. And we hit the yes. We're going to get a screen here that says we're going to write them a check. And it's check number 18. And it's going to go ahead and create the check. With just 3 clicks here to just one final review. Now, we wouldn't even have to review it, right? We could have it just send an EFT. That's a little scary, probably too far. But again, the system did all that automation. I didn't have to do a thing. It's all done. So that's.
And if it is scary, it would still bring that ticket in and you could just click the void on the settlement and go back to the ticket and look at it if you wanted. So it doesn't lock you into having to, sometimes automation is awesome and it can really clearly get you right to a payment. In fact, you could just pay that thing right away if you wanted, but you could also back away from it too. Like if you're nervous about it or you've got a client or customer that maybe have many contracts and you like to articulate exactly how it comes in, you can still bring that automation in. It can take a first pass at it and you can change it if you want, it both saves you time, but gives you the option to, even if you don't like the result, you can change it quickly and you're still faster than you were before.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I want to expound on that a little bit more too, Becky, because if you think about, so I'll just give a real big comparison. My kids, I've got a very big range of kids from 17, 10 to 7. Every single one of them has grown up in this digital age, right? So paper, I haven't gotten a paper check in probably 20 years, right? And I get it. There's going to be a variety of different types of people that want different things when it comes to how they're going to be paid, right? But to your point, automation makes it so that you could have it where as long as you could even have a review process beforehand, before that EFT is sent as an example. And then from there, what you can do is you can let the system do the automation, or what I call really automagically, right, tackling things. Because what that allows you to do is focus on exceptions that do need your time. Because if you're running your business, in any business, whether it's ag, distribution, manufacturing, if you're always looking at exceptions and you don't build something into the process through automation, well, you're focusing on a lot of the wrong things, right? You don't want to focus on things that pass all the business rules that you've defined inside of the system. You want to focus on the ones that are a little bit off, so that way you can figure out, well, do I need to align that? Do I need to change my automation process? But it really helps you scale. And Keith and I have talked about this, and Becky, I'm pretty sure you've heard it as well. If we think about the ag market, margins for a lot of these customers are pretty small, right? And so the more you can automate with the less resources that are there, the better that you're going to have in terms of profitability and sustainability in the future as well with it. So it's a really cool concept in my mind as well.
Very cool. And I think too, we draw a little distinction between automation and artificial intelligence, right?
Yep.
So the next step of this now is adding the AI component, and maybe that's what it's being smarter about which contract it applies to, and those types of things are coming in the future too. So yeah, there's a lot of cool things going on, and a lot more to come. Let's get back to that to the next one on the list. Food safety and sustainability. So this is what's going on. Consumers want to know where their food was grown. So if I bake some bread and I've got some flour, I want to know where that wheat was grown and what farmer and what even down to what agronomy practices were used on that bushel of wheat that was grown out at that farm. So how do we solve that today? And this is one of the final one of the three that are being solved today. Is we do that through farm field lot numbers and manufacturing and finished lot numbers through that identity preservation stuff. Scott, you got a lot more to say about that.
Yeah, so this is kind of table stakes, I think, in a lot of business systems. But it's interesting, like as we've gone through this adventure in the ag market, in any agribusiness, there's a lot of solutions out there that just don't do this very well, right? Or it's an afterthought. And the key thing, the reason that Stoneridge and Levridge built really a lot of the commodity-based processing on an ERP system is because there's a lot of great capabilities that are natively inside of that base solution that we can use to tackle these given requirements. And an example of that, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and just take control just really quickly. I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen so everyone can see what I've got on here. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up then as well finance and operations. And let's go ahead and get back to my presentation view here. There we go. So we're back into F&O, right, as we're kind of going through and looking at some of the details here. Now, one of them I wanted to show was actually going to be this item traceability. And so we're going to get a timeout as we go through this as it reconnects just really quickly here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in like item tracing inside of here to be able to drive this conversation. Now, I'm not going to show all the technical setup, right? That would be really kind of boring. I'm sure some would be curious, but we don't have enough time to go through all of it. High level, what I did is I had corn that was a commodity that basically when we received it, we assigned it a batch number or a lot number, right, as we go through that. Now, you don't have to do that. Remember, we understand as well, depending upon the type of operation, the blend that occurs when you actually take, for example, corn and you put it into a silo and then how that occurs, we get that it's not going to be an exact science all the time. We will say, though, that they're getting better and better at that, and there's different monitoring devices that you can now put inside of these silos that help you actually more accurately understand what product and what layer and what batch potentially is being used, or even how full that particular grain silo is, right? But the point here is that when you take that particular commodity, how do I get it then so that if I create ground corn, or if I create ground corn that goes into feed, or I know, Keith, we were talking about wheat earlier, where this could be wheat berries that get ground down to create flour, right? And then you've got some of the byproducts that you may have inside of the solution. Well, those are all native inside of F&O. We have full capability as a first party, and what I mean by that, by Microsoft, they added that capability to do production where we can have a primary product and then co-products and byproducts inside of the system. The thing I want to show here, though, is that from a batch number perspective, so if we then take that, bag it, put it into a tote, whatever it is as part of that unit of measure conversion that you may be doing, what we can use here are these item tracing based capabilities in the solution to basically then identify, well, where did that corn go? So here's an example of ground corn where I had, for example, production that also went and was sold as part of this, right? So from production as an example, what I can also do is I can trace backwards from production to go upwards. So if I had multiple sales orders as an example, I could see who actually got that product at the end. And in the tracing here, we understand like food safety, you don't want to be in this spot, and I totally understand it. But when you need to be able to see, well, what order is actually shipped with this product, well, I can click on that and I can see every single order that was actually fulfilled from that batch number. So that way I could take this particular detail and I may then use that, for example, for a recall notice that may be needed. Or let's look at the positive light with it. Maybe there's an upsell opportunity with the product that we have so that we can actually sell, for example, example, additional ingredients or additional products, and we want to see a list of who we've actually shipped this product to in the past as well. But this traceability, as you can see, allows you basically to look at it from end to end, where I can look at what was received. I can go to the purchase order or even the production order as an example. I can even click on the actual production order, bring it up and view it. And then from here, I can look at all the different types of transactions that actually posted then against this particular batch order to see if we had multiple, releases of it, or if we had multiple consumption through, different types of silos that we consumed with it. So the point that I'm trying to make just really quickly here is the fact that full item traceability, so that when you think about the farm to table concept, if you have the information inside of Dynamics, you're going to be able to very easily share that and show that, and then use that obviously from your customer experience perspective. We've seen customers now, right, Keith, that are using like QR codes, that they put the QR code on the bag of the product. The consumer scans it, and it shows this traceability all the way through as it goes through that process. So it's a pretty cool concept, and it's a really important one in ag in the future here as well. So Keith, that's kind of what I had there. What do you got next?
All right, thanks, Scott. That was awesome. Yeah,
Oh, Becky had something too.
Becky.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Becky.
Sure.
I want to point, like, we've extended that functionality, Scott, in Levridge, so that you can put that batch number even on the scale ticket as it comes into your facility, so that and that ticket also can have that farm and field that it came from. So that tracing starts immediately, like as soon as it comes into your door as that retailer or that processor. And also, well, I think this is fairly well resolved today. I think coming in the future, and kind of nuance to this, is the ability to track carbon credits and how they sort of play into this, because we're starting to hear more and more about that. And I think we think that's going to come into scale tickets on as part of the grading system, that the governments are yet figuring out like how that will work exactly, so that there's some standards around it. But we've been preparing for that. That's how we think they'll come in, and I don't see why people wouldn't also want that. Like, what is the impact of the production process and what you're taking in on the environment? That's sort of next steps in this sort of tracking process too.
That's a good point. It's an ever evolving requirements there, so we'll keep an eye on that. Thank you, Becky. Okay, so we've done the three that we're solving, and most all those trees, we'll even solve them better in the future. But let's look at the two now that are not being solved. And the first one is the long lines at the grain elevator. So it's fall here in Minnesota. So we have long lines at the elevator. Trucks arrive and quicker than they can unload them. So one of the problems is how do you solve that? So when the lines are long at the grain elevator, the growers aren't happy because they have their truck drivers sitting in line doing nothing. The elevator or the grain processor, they're not happy because they're overworked and they're stressed by all the truckers that are being impatient. And heck, if the lines are long enough and they're out on the road, the highway department's not happy, law enforcement's not happy. It's a safety issue. So what can we do in the future to kind of control and help with those long lines at the elevator?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So, I was going to say, this is a fun one.
This is a fun one. Today, there's webcams on top of the elevators that say, "Hey, look, there's some trucks in line." We think with artificial intelligence, Scott, you're going to show us a little bit of that next.
Yeah.
And then
there's also scheduling systems, but if you can get my dad to use one, I'll give you $100.
Yeah. We talk about let's talk about that after we come back, Scott, from your you've got a little show with the trucks in line.
Yeah, more proof of concept, right? So these are things that we're starting to think through a little bit more to say, hey, like what can we do with data that is there? Because remember, one of the core themes that I talk about in the organization is the concept that data can be used to drive a lot of the different types of processes. And once again, AI, don't think about it as this magical thing that solves everything. AI is about automation. And at the core of everything, the reason AI is even getting more momentum in our industry is because it has the ability to automate certain tasks that may take that information or that data and streamline it in a format that other people can consume and use. So with that, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and flip this over just really quickly and share my screen. And we're going to go through a very high level proof of concept. And I really love this proof of concept because it just highlights what we can do, obviously, with Dynamics and with the Power Platform and really with all the different Microsoft-based technologies. So what I'm going to do here just really quickly is I'm going to show an image. There is our image, and look at that. It's even saying AI here inside of my image editor, which is pretty funny. So this is pretty common. You can configure a lot of these webcams basically to save an image every so often to a particular file folder or a file share. On the one that we looked at as an example, we actually had a bunch of them that we were looking at that were like, well, we could use this or that. We decided to go down this route with it, but the intent is to say, hey, if you've got a webcam that's capturing that and somebody's pulling it up on a website, well, that means then we can access that data then in some way, shape, or form. Now, what we did is we actually went through and then set up inside of Power Automate. If I actually go into Power Automate here, if I find it, basically a little flow. And this flow, what it does is it recurs every minute in this environment. And what it's doing is it's grabbing that saved image, it's taking that image and then sending it to ChatGPT. It's taking the output of ChatGPT and then it's adding it to a truck history table in the background that basically states how many trucks do we have at that given time when that image was actually captured. So one of the cool things about AI in the future here, right now we use it with what's called large language models. What that means is it's like a word calculator. You tell it, you ask it something in a prompt, and then it looks and figures out really in terms of what words need to be said to match the output correctly from that prompt. And so it's a word calculator. Well, we're able to now also use it to send an image to it to say, hey, how many trucks are actually here? So what you can do is when you send that to the LLM, you can say, I have a picture of a truck queue. How many trucks are actually in this queue that I need to actually count? And what it will do is it will actually go through and identify and count then all the different trucks that are in line here. And what we've done is we've set this up to be automated so that as you can see here, when I look at my data that's inside of here, I've got 0, 0, 0 at all these different times, and then things start picking up. Now, time-wise, this is in UTC, so add 6 hours as part of that. So the cool thing about this, though, then, is the fact that we can take this data now when we're running it and processing it to actually drive then results. So here is what I wanted to kind of show you then, right? So this is really easy. This isn't rocket science. This is actually a very easy concept of setting up a Power Automate that looks at an image, that sends that image to a computer that can see, right, and then count, and then basically take that information and bring it back and store it in that table that I showed. And then we get the Google Analytics times, right? In terms of, we can see at 4 a.m., for example, we've got 2 trucks in Alexandria because I'm just doing Alec in here as part of this. But you can see over time then the scale. It looks like when lunch comes, it looks like a lot of people are coming in here to drop off a lot of the product, right, as they're doing that. Maybe they're eating lunch while they're waiting inside of their truck, right? But the cool thing about this is that you can use this data then to communicate busy times that you're typically going to see. And I didn't have time to do it for this demonstration, but I'm thinking through the next steps around this, which is if we have this data, we can actually do what's called demand planning. We can actually use that same type of calculation to say, look at last year's harvest to see when the time period started to increase based upon when the harvest date started. Well, we could actually take that and then calculate as well what our expected load was going to be, so to speak, in terms of what those drop-offs are going to be, because we now have the ability for a system to calculate what those counts are in terms of how many trucks are there to then basically bring that full circle. So once you have the data, right, you could absolutely do this by having somebody open up the camera image every minute and type it into a record, but that seems like a big waste of time of a person's time. This is where AI and automation really comes into play as part of it. So like I said, Keith, this is just a proof of concept. It works fantastic from what we've seen so far. There's other things that we can go deeper into with this, but I think that this is just a really good start of saying, hey, think about things that you want that would require a human to look or interact with data, use AI to drive that, and then take that output of that data, that maybe normalized or massaged data, and then use it in your reporting or use it on your website or use it in certain areas then that help you then communicate and drive then maybe even like a reservation system that you could have with this as well, right? So there's just a lot of cool concepts in that regard, Keith. Back to you, sir.
Hey, that's very cool. Thank you, Scott. I hadn't seen that work before, but yeah, just being able to read that picture and say, hey, there's 5 trucks in line, there's 15 trucks in line. That's pretty neat technology coming down the line. I can see that. I think the other thing that might happen someday is a quicker, easier reservation system, right? So if they're Becky, talk to us about like at a restaurant or any other type of busy facility that helps control the lines.
Yeah, I mean, you see that now, everybody's like go to the doctor at the same time. You just take a number, your slot is between, maybe like I just moved my daughters into college and they say, okay, your move-in time is from 10 to 12 and you have that much time, and you wouldn't even need that much time for it to drop off the contents of a truck. But that, those systems are out there, and it's just, adoption of systems sometimes is harder, right? That's what I'm saying. Like my dad, he's not the guy who's going to log in and make a reservation because honestly, his schedule is, he's just out in the field doing his thing. But, he would check the truck numbers because when it occurs to them that, okay, it's time to go, what's it look like? Okay, if I wait 10 minutes, it might be better,
Yeah. Yeah. Or could wait till after lunch or some of those things might be great. Yeah, good idea. Okay, great. So we get to the last one here. We're running a little bit short on time, so we're going to get to the last problem that we are not solving, and that is the efficiencies between business to business. So what I've drawn up here in a real simple cartoon is we got the grain elevator over on the left, we've got a grain processor on the right, we get a scale ticket, we weigh that truck. Those weights and grades that are taken at the origin, they need to get to the plant, to the grain processor. And right now, those things are happening probably through a spreadsheet or an email or heck, a physical ticket. And then when that truck finishes the trip, it's weighed at the destination, and that ticket information needs to get back to the grain elevator, right? So a lot of times these are, sometimes it's done on paper. If you're lucky, you might get a spreadsheet with the information on it. So what's going on is we have one grain elevator and going to one plant in that scenario. And so, but in real life, we have multiple grain elevators going to that plant. And we have multiple plants for each grain elevator. So we have all these kind of point-to-point connections, which we can do that today and send tickets from point to point. But man, it gets to be a lot of connections to manage and if failures, and because I've only drawn 4 elevators, and certainly there's plants that buy from dozens and dozens or hundreds, right? So this hairball really develops into a real challenge. So I think what's going on in the future is some way to do this through a hub.
Yeah, I agree, Keith. The tickets are at the heart of how most of our folks want to exchange. That's the information that they really care about, is what are the quantities in there, what is the commodity, and so forth. And in other industries, they have similar things. If you think about Amazon and the number of business partners that they have on it, second by second, I imagine, kind of exchanging information. They do this through a hub. And I think in the future for ag, that's exactly where we'd want to be too, some sort of Azure shared space where tickets can flow from one party to multiple parties and vice versa, and information is kind of flowing more naturally. Right now, we're sort of in technologies where it's file-based, and that doesn't lend itself well to secure environments, and you have to let each party add, and the ticket gets consumed, kind of eaten, just like your previous example where it goes away, and then who's the next consumer, right? You got to put it out there. That's not generally what most people want at this point. If you have this sort of scenario where you have many business partners, you want a ticket that goes out there digitally and can be and you can securely trade information with as many parties as you want to. That is definitely what we see happening. For Levridge, we want to have that hub be in Azure. We put the tickets out there for whatever parties you want to send it to, and they can send you return information to that you can respond to. And I think everyone would want that. Every client that we've done work with has many parties that they need to send information. They want to send information to their grower, portals, so that their clients can see this information. They want to send tickets to the parties that they need to purchase information. If they have more procurement things that they need, it's everywhere. That people want to quickly relay information and do business without calling, without paper trails, without all of the stuff that just inhibits progress. This can be done instantaneously now.
Yeah, and just to add more to that, Becky, like I love how you're saying like Azure, like the classic way of doing it might be that you transfer files back and forth in XML in a format, right? That would be digital. I'm gonna tell you, like with AI enablement, that's gonna change that story. It can be to the point now where a scale ticket, if you've got a good scale ticket document, for example, you can use image recognition or text description or text extraction from a document that may be able to do some of that without then creating or having to create an additional integration. So an example would be you've got a business partner, they by default send an email with a scale ticket that has all the details of that particular ticket. We could actually take that in the hub, because remember the hub could either be what we would classify as unstructured data, which would be like a PDF document, or structured data like an XML document. And what we could do is we could say, look at that document like a human would and fill out the fields in terms of what the values are supposed to be in your system based off of what we're seeing here. So, like I said, that's probably the next step after the hub is created, but it may actually aid us in the future of actually making integrations much faster and easier for very simplistic scenarios to start. And we know moving forward here in the next couple of years, we've already seen it with the GPT 3.5, 4, with now Strawberry, which is classified as O1. It's just getting better and better with each iteration in terms of what it can do. So the simple ones might be the ones we tackle now, but in 5 years, the more complex ones, we may be having different conversations of saying, yeah, we don't even use XML anymore. Just send us the document that a human usually reads, and we can input that data exactly into your system as we go through that process. So, like I said, just things to think through in the future.